I'm Whitney.
I'm Mindy.
And I'm Deb.
We're three best friends who love nerdy things.
Well, some people think we're nerdy, but we think we're pretty awesome.
This is our nerdiest thing.
This season, we are discussing Jennifer L. Armentrout's From Blood and Ash, all of the books in that series, plus the Flesh and Fire series as well. We are spoiler friendly, so listen at your own risk. Hello, fellow nerds, and welcome to our nerdiest thing. Today we are talking about From Blood and Ash by Jennifer L. Armentrout, chapters 2 and 3. It's Hawke.
And he's hot.
So hot.
Hawke.
Yeah. It's Hawke time.
In my panties.
We should do what they do on Cobra Kai and have like a little soundbite of a hawk like screeching.
Insert Hawke sound here. Well, what does it sound? What?
Not
Whitney?
that.
I think it's like.
It's like
What does a hawk sound like?
It's like a
Whitney?
screech. Like
Go ahead and show us. That reminds me of Friends when Ross is like, and they made a high-pitched wailing sound, and he's like, but how?
But what did it sound like? Deb, will you please do our nerdiest cocktail?
Are you sure you're ready?
We're probably not, but whatever.
Okay, tonight's cocktail, which is sponsored by Make and Muddle, is called Macedonia After Dark. It's got yummy dark rum in it, the Make and Muddle spiced cherry vanilla syrup, a dash of molasses or chocolate bitters. They do say that the molasses bitters is supposed to put it over the top, but you have to order it online. So I don't have any, unfortunately. But the reason that Make and Muddle chose this cocktail is because they feel like Macedonia feels like a mixed bag of rich and poor, high and low birth folks. So rum translates across all socioeconomic groups. I just think of Pirates of the Caribbean.
Yeah,
Whenever you say
me
that,
too.
which I didn't really realize that. So she says Diplomatico is an exceptional 12-year-old rum and is reasonably priced for a good pour. And like I said, she says that molasses bitters will take this over the top, but we use chocolate bitters for our drink tonight. It's quite delicious.
It
Yeah.
is delicious.
And I had to warn all three of us not to get super drunk like last time when we had a rum drink. So we're going to try to be careful. But our editor may have some fun at the end of this like he did on the last rum episode.
I have to say, if you haven't been able to try the Make and Muddle syrups, this cherry vanilla one, it's got such a nice little bite. It tastes like a little cinnamon red hot. It's
It does.
so
It is,
good.
yeah,
Delicious.
it is really good. Mindy, can you please spin the wheel o' names for our It's
Is it
me
Whitney again?
That's so funny. It knows
It was
that
like
it skipped
never
me.
you last
That's what I'm
season.
saying. Like it knows that it skipped me so many times. That is hilarious. Okay, well
Let's see how you do.
let me get the 30-second timer going and and here we go. So Poppy has just walked into a room at the Red Pearl and there was a hard male body behind her and it's Hawke Flynn, and he is so hot and Poppy thinks he's hot and everybody else thinks he's hot and he knows he's hot and he thinks that she's somebody else and basically like takes his shirt off and starts making out with her and Poppy's like, yes. And then somebody comes and knocks on the door and oh no. And then she leaves while she still can and wishes that she had stayed. The end.
That was one chapter of the two.
Yeah.
Sorry, I talked too much about Hawke
She
being hot.
talked- You said he was hot for about 15 seconds of that.
Like half the recap.
In case you guys didn't catch it, Hawke is hot.
And everybody thinks so. Everybody thinks he's
If
hot.
you've not seen fan art of Castile, I would highly recommend it. Just make sure you're home
Spoiler
alone if you know
alert.
what I'm saying.
Spoiler alert.
Oh, I said Castile and not Hawke. Sorry.
Oh,
this
yeah.
is a spoiler.
This
It's
is- yeah.
spoiler friendly.
We are-
just wanted to make sure people knew that you weren't already too drunk to remember who we were talking about.
Fuck you.
That was a sick burn.
See if you get a drink next week. No more Make and Muddle cherry syrup for you.
Yeah,
You know
that's
you want me
funny.
to drink. I'm funnier when I drink.
Aren't we all?
Yeah. Mindy, will you please do our nerdiest vocabulary?
Yes, I would love to. So this week, we'll start with Hawke because he's hot. The name Hawke, it doesn't normally have an E on it, so I kind of went with whatever kind of came up, but it does have a British origin.
I know what came up.
Oh,
that was good.
Whew. I gotta fan myself.
We're all horny even saying his name.
So the name is of British origin, and of course it means falcon or bird of prey. So because there is all sorts of things on the internet about spirit animals, I wanted to look up the symbolism of a hawk and see if it correlated. There's a lot, actually. There's intelligence, independence, adaptability, clairvoyance, spiritual awareness, power, ambition, strength, dominance, protection, and security.
I ship it.
Yes. And I mean, aside from the clairvoyance, he's not clear. He didn't.
No.
Yeah, I was going to
He
say.
can see into my pants. This is like when we started ACOTAR at first, though, where I was like just super horny the first couple episodes, and then it got better.
I guess
I'm not super sorry.
But other than that, I think those all really fit. They're pretty.
Yeah, they describe Hawke,
Yes.
the character Hawke.
And then the other thing I found out about hawks is they're predatory animals, which he definitely is a predatory person, that thrive on solitude. They recognize the power of a monogamous relationship, but also value independence.
And just to clarify, he's not predatory in like a creepy
No, I mean like
assaulter kind
when
of
I think
way.
of predatory, I think of like
She talks about how
determined
he stalks
and-
across the room.
Yeah.
Well, yes.
That's predatory behavior.
Yeah,
He
I
stabs
just-
the bed with her
wanted,
knife.
I wanted to be clear.
He's not going to go on to catch a predator or anything.
You're right,
but
exactly.
We don't need to bring a black light into the red pearl.
He's not going on the internet and
No, can you
stalking,
imagine?
girls that are 500 years younger than him.
Well, only a couple hundred. Only 200.
So in true fashion, of course, I had to look up on the Urban Dictionary, and I will tell you there were 112 pages of entries for the name
my
Hawke.
gosh.
Now, some of it was just Hawke without an E, and a lot of it was sort of uninspired and just sort of dumb stuff. And I only went through 20 pages, and then I finally gave up. But this is what I got.
I know. I was just thinking that's way more than I would have.
Well, there's like 6 on
Props.
every page.
I would have been like,
Props
well,
to
I got
humanity.
through 3 pages.
Well, I was looking for something interesting, and I did fall on a couple of cool little ones that would correlate with Hawke. So the first one, it's Hawke with an E, and it's a misspelled type of bird. Well,
misspelled.
okay, if that's what you want to think. The next one, I feel like I have to do this in a voice. A hawk is a fucking bird, you scrubs. As in, look, there's a hawk in the fucking sky. Let's go shoot it. I'm like, somebody's really angry about these entries. I don't know. But then the last 2 I found were very typical of our hot male. This says a male version of the cougar, a fine ass man who preys on younger women.
Well, that is
that
accurate.
tracks.
Yeah, that's accurate.
And then the other one was apparently somebody dated somebody named Hawke who has a controlling boyfriend who is cocky and gets jealous easily.
That sounds pretty typical, too.
Again, that tracks, yes. So that's how everybody thinks of Hawke in the first 20 pages on Urban Dictionary.
That 112 pages?
Yes. And there's like 6 or so on each page.
That's too many.
That's
Yeah.
still 6 times 112.
At a certain point, you got to close out the ability to add entries.
I agree. I would agree with that. And some of them were
that
really
made me
stupid.
giggle.
So I don't know. I feel like somebody should go monitor that a little bit and trim the field there.
Does that just make us old ladies? Of
Maybe. We did just sound like the Golden Girls there.
Someone needs to go edit that way.
that is too much information. All the silliness and nonsense out there.
And so because she does meet, or we do kind of meet Tawny in these chapters. She's mentioned her a couple times, her handmaiden, which Whitney did not get to in the 30-second recap.
She's
I
in
thought
chapter
about her.
3.
I thought about her in my head. I just didn't
It
get it
is
out.
the thought that counts when
Yeah,
you're doing
exactly.
the 30-second countdown.
Sure, yeah.
There were a few things relating to the name Tawny that I thought might be something that people would be wanting to know about. So Tawny is actually of Irish origin, and it means a green field or golden brown or the warm sandy color of a lion's coat.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which,
Since that's
like-
how her skin's described.
And I
Yeah.
kind of feel like once I read that, now I'm picturing her with this because she's got all that curly hair.
I was just
that curly
thinking
dark
that,
hair.
yeah.
Like she's got like a mane.
You know who I
She's
picture
really-
her as is the black girl on Bridgerton. That's who I picture her. That's pregnant.
Yeah.
I'll have to look at that actress's name.
Because she's got the curls.
She has those curls and she's beautiful.
Yes.
Yeah. I think that's who should play Tawny in the Hulu show when they make this, because they really should.
They definitely should.
Yeah.
I'm on board with that. I ship it. So the name Tawny, actually, this is just a fun little tidbit. The name Tawny hit the height of its popularity in 1989. Incidentally, the Whitesnake video that starred Tawny Katane was released in 1982. So that means the teenagers of that time grew up to name their kids Tawny.
I would like to know how many of those 80s babies were named Tawny because the dad was like, you know what I really like? Tawny sounds kind of cool. Or if it was girls that were like...
I want her to grow up and hump a hood of a car.
Well, maybe, but just, if you're
What
a teenage...
song was it, y'all?
I'm trying to remember.
Because I want to
Here
say,
I go again.
Oh.
Here I go
yeah,
again on my own.
We'll link it in the show notes.
That was the height of MTV, and that was a major video. Finally, there are a few things about Tawny in the Urban Dictionary. The first one I found was Tawnies are beautiful and sociable girls, loved and cherished by all. Which
That fits.
I think that fits really well. Tawny is a beautiful, perfect girl. You can't describe her. She's everything you've always wanted and more. She has one of the best personalities possible and is a caring, loving, smart person all the time. She's beautiful inside and out with gorgeous eyes and a breathtaking smile. Once you have a Tawny in your life, don't let her go. She's everything you'll ever need. Which, when she's describing Tawny in this, a lot of that is what she says about her.
I would also... Okay, this is headcanon for me now on this particular Urban Dictionary entry. That was written by a teenage boy who got dumped by his girlfriend Tawny, and in an effort to win her back wrote all that. And then sent her the link. It was like, look
What I wrote
for
about you.
Yeah,
It's on Urban Dictionary.
Was his name Tamlin?
I mean, that's just it's giving off real sorry I cheated on you. Take me back vibes,
It's giving off the real here I go again on my own vibes.
He definitely pulled out the thesaurus on that, I think, because, breathtaking and, because if he was a dumb high schooler, I don't know that he would pull that one out of his ass.
I used the thesaurus.
And finally, there's one that's a complete opposite, and it really made me think because she does talk in this chapter about how she trusts Tawny, but only to a certain point, because she's not sure she can really trust anybody to know if they like her because she's the maiden or if because she's her. So this one sort of hit a little nerve or something with me. A girl who may seem like she's cool, but is really a bitch. She will gain your trust, then stab you in the back. Beware of anyone with the name Tawny, for she will stab you in the back. Now this, after your headcanon, this sounds like what happened when she rejected him the second time.
Right? Yeah. Maybe that's all the same person.
It might be.
Never mind, Tawny, you're a bitch. That's some great, not bad masculinity right there, boys. Good job.
Yeah.
So anyway, little twist on that. And we still don't know at this point through all the books exactly where Tawny's going to fit in.
I think Tawny's bad in game.
I kind of do too.
Because why did they change? Because if you've not read ahead in these books yet, Tawny does who curses her? The queen, the blood queen.
The queen.
So the blood queen puts this little curse on her, and when she wakes up, her hair is all white and her eyes are white, and she's like. Whitney's shaking her head no.
She doesn't. It's not a curse. She gets stabbed with Shadowstone.
Oh,
okay,
that's right. Yeah.
So, but I don't understand why Tawny has come back if she's not going to have a really big role.
Yeah, she can't be the same. She has to have changed somehow. And they made a big point of her being, Tawny was just like she's always been.
Maybe
happy
she's
and
going to end up
bubbly.
with Kieran. That would be nice.
I think that she's meant to be with Kieran, and I think that she has some kind of connection to like the fates or a god or goddess or something. Because
maybe she's Kieran's Victor.
Maybe I don't
That'd
know.
be fun.
Oh, that would be
But
interesting.
there's in War of Two Queens, they're talking to Reaver about Shadowstone, and they were like, asking him about Shadowstone and humans, I guess. And he's like, well, if she was a human, she would have been dead. And the fact that she isn't is curious, right? But also
curious.
remember too that when Tawny was in that like coma, basically after her Shadowstone stabbing, she is visited in her dreams by Victor. who explains to her that he was a victor and that he has a message for Poppy, whatever. And so the theory from the characters in the book at this point is that she looks like that because she was truly dying and the fates stepped in and saved her, but just couldn't like return her back to her form because she was dying.
Oh, interesting.
So I don't know. I refuse to accept that Tawny might be bad. No.
I'm not saying it's 100%, but I definitely get a little bit of a vibe there that I wouldn't be surprised if she was a little bit bad.
Also, in the Jaylanders Facebook group, Jennifer Armentrout said that there are no backstabbers in the core group. So if Tawny is part of the core group, which she may or may not be, she's definitely part of Poppy's core, but not necessarily her and
I will
Cass
say also,
together.
though, we know that these authors like to keep secrets.
Well,
so
yeah,
I don't
that's
really
true.
take anything at face value.
Yeah, I don't either.
No.
I mean, Jennifer Armentrout does always say she believes in a happy ending. So I do think that will happen. And if you read any of her other series, that she does have happy endings typically. But I mean, there's got to be another backstabber in there somewhere because Alistair is working with someone.
Yeah.
Well, yes. Well, that's what her post, she was answering a question and basically was like, it's not any of the like core intergroup people. But the way that she worded it was definitely like, it is somebody else. Like there is 100% a backstabber. It's just not like the
We
inner
don't know
circle.
exactly who it is.
Right. But
know,
who does she consider the inner circle, right? Is it like
Yeah.
Cass, Poppy, and Kieran? And,
Right.
like that's it? Or
That's a good point.
Or, you know, how
'Cause,
many
you know,
people is that?
I've said from the beginning that I don't think Delano's a good guy.
I disagree with you.
I know that you do.
There will be no more discussion.
I beg to differ. I will take your microphone away. No, but seriously, like he is always a part of things when shit goes down.
But
But that's because
but
he's our
Whitney's
bonded
theory
wolven.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Yeah.
if he's our bonded wolven, he's always
You
there.
know what? You two don't know.
Neither
Like,
do
I'm not agreeing with either of you. I'm just saying it could be possible
pointing things
either
out.
way.
There's definitely more to Delano than meets the eye. So
Well,
let's
yeah.
leave it
I
at
would
that.
agree with that.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about Hawke.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
You like that segue? So Poppy is in this room. She has been sent there by who we know as Miss Willa, but Poppy doesn't know that. And she just basically got like manhandled by a stranger. And at the very beginning of this chapter 2, she realizes, oh crap, I just walked into Hawke Flynn's room. Hawke is the hot new guard in town from the Capitol. And Poppy and like every other person is like, hey, let's go watch the hot
She
boy.
talks about how she and the Duchess watch
Yes.
his sweat
Sweat
slicked
slicked
arms.
arms. I wrote that down too.
And I was like, well,
I mean, yes. So she's basically like, he is super hot. I wrote down, I love that she's just like, he is so hot. Everyone thinks he's hot. I think he's hot. I watch him because he's hot. Like, she's just.
well, and she goes on to describe what he looks like.
Well, yeah.
And she says something that I think is really sweet. She's like, he has a dimple on his left cheek. I wonder if he has one on the other side. And I'm like,
I
he
know.
does.
Yeah.
We'll find out. Well, I do want to ask though. She describes that he has a well-formed mouth.
I think that just means like,
Luscious.
yeah.
Okay, but that's such a weird way to
Some
say
really
that.
kissable lips.
Okay, that sounds more enticing than a well-formed mouth.
I don't know. Well-formed mouth kind of did it for me.
I know. I was not bothered
It
by
seemed
that.
very clinical to me. Like
I know exactly
like
what that
he
looks like.
doesn't have.
You know who has a well-formed mouth? Look behind you at Dean Winchester stand-up.
that
here
is
in the
a
studio.
luscious, kissable mouth.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, I don't
Let me
know how I
see.
feel about
pout,
this.
Pout your lips and let's see if it's well-formed. No, you just have duck face.
I don't know. it
Jensen
just sounds
Ackles has
clinical to me.
well-formed lips.
That's like his lips are not abnormal. That's what it sounded like to me.
He doesn't have any like deformed mouth
Yeah.
issues.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, that's good, I guess.
He's got all his teeth. He doesn't have cracked lips. He doesn't need chapstick.
Yeah, he uses Aquaphor, keeps it moisturized. I did read it used to be like a bonus chapter that was Hawke's point of view of this first meeting in the Red Pearl, but now we're going to get an entire book from Hawke's point of view. So I don't know if that's going to be in that book or if it's going to be different or what. But I did read that chapter, and I'm gonna like drop some tidbits in.
Well, I have read it also. And
Did you? Okay, good.
Yeah, and I have a
Why
comparison.
didn't I get this part of the assignment? I like Hawke.
I don't know.
I have a take on it, and you'll probably hit some of these points, but I have a take on beauty standards and how Poppy feels about herself and how Hawke feels about her.
At this point, he thinks that she is Britta. So she stole the cloak from somebody that works in the castle whose name is Britta. And Britta has slept with Hawke like fairly recently. And so
I'm so jealous.
When
Well, so was Poppy.
he sees the cloak and not the person, and recognizes it as Britta's cloak and just assumes that it is her, and does not realize that it is not Britta until they kiss on the bed.
And he's like, I
So-
would know because she sucked my tongue down her
Well,
throat.
what's really funny, I didn't remember this from the bonus chapter. He was super drunk the
first time
when he was with Britta. And so this whole time he's like, I thought that she was a little bit smaller than this. Like, I thought that she smelled different. And like, but he's like, whatever. I was super drunk. I don't know. I guess I just don't remember correctly.
And he's like, thank goodness, because this is turning me on.
I know that. Yeah, I enjoyed that a lot.
I love poor Poppy. She's so awkward. When he says that, she starts thinking, am I supposed to do that? That seems really weird.
Yeah, like is that how you do it? So I immediately laughed at the very beginning because she compares Hawke to the cave cat, how his prowling predatory behavior that she saw once as a child in the castle. And that is actually her father, that
Yes,
cave cat.
right.
And I wrote down kind of gross daddy issues, which took me down a very deep dive.
I was wondering where
into-
you were going to weave daddy issues into this.
Yeah, I texted you guys earlier this week, like, I'm going to talk about daddy issues. And this is why, because she is immediately comparing, she doesn't know it, but she is immediately comparing this guy that she thinks is like so attractive and that she's got this huge crush on. She's comparing him to her father, which is why I was like, daddy issues. And we
She
joke.
doesn't know that's her dad, though.
No, but it is her dad.
Yeah.
So, I mean, daddy issues, right? So I Googled daddy issues, and that was a fun search.
Sounds like a good rabbit hole.
I ended up on KentuckyCounselingCenter.com, which I think is just somebody's like private counseling office. And they talked about daddy issues. So daddy issues in general stems first from Sigmund Freud's theory of a father complex. And the father complex basically says that everybody has unconscious impulses that are a result of their relationship with their father. Those impulses can be positive or negative. A positive impulse would be admiring your partner the way that you admired or wanted to admire your father, or negative impulses like fear and distrust of the other person. Freud also coined the Oedipus complex, which really focuses on males, and it's the theory that children are subconsciously attracted to their opposite sex parent. And Oedipus is a Greek tragedy where a man ends up like marrying his mom unknowingly, like his biological mom that he didn't
Ew.
grow up with. Like, it's a whole gross thing. I found from a different article from Evie magazine. This article was called "Why Women Are Attracted to Men Like Their Fathers According to Science" by Megan Dillon.
Very
You like that
specific.
title? I know, right? That article talked about the Oedipus complex as well, but also discussed Carl Jung's theory that he coined the Electra complex, which focuses on daughters instead of sons. A daughter's longing for her father and competition with her mother. The daughter possesses an unconscious desire to replace her mother as her father's sexual partners, thus leading to rivalry between the daughter and the mother.
I'm not having fun right now.
Oh no, just wait. Hold on.
Ancient
Hold on.
Greeks were kind of creepy.
Just hold up. So that Evie magazine article continued. I wrote down this quote because it made me laugh. Updated modern psychology gives us more complex and less gross and creepy reasons as to why we're often attracted to men who are similar to our fathers. And that explanation is, as infants, we develop an unconscious schema of what love is based on the way we're treated by our primary caregivers.
Well, fuck.
Then as adults, we are attracted to people who stimulate us in the same way. So you're going to subconsciously or unconsciously be attracted to somebody who is similar to your parent and your upbringing. So if you had a good upbringing with stable dads, that's great. And if you didn't, it sucks for you. Is basically what this
I'm
article
just gonna
said.
say it again. Well, fuck.
Right? So here's some signs, going back to the KentuckyCounselingCenter.com, some signs you might have daddy issues. You are...
Hold on. I want to do a check mark how many of these issues do you have?
Do I have?
Yeah,
okay,
let's
hold
go
on.
through it.
You are interested in much older men. And I would say in real life, no. But like characters and actors,
Tell
like
them
TV
who you
shows,
like.
I like Pedro Pascal. Sorry.
We do not get it.
You know what? I'm not sorry.
You don't have to be sorry.
If you follow us
I
on
like him.
Instagram, you already know this. I mean, we've been making fun of Whitney so bad. And people are defending her.
Well,
Because I'm right.
I was going to say, here's the thing. I feel like we are the weirdos, Deb. Like, everybody is on this train.
You and I don't have daddy issues.
I don't get it. I don't. I
Well.
just don't get it.
I mean,
He looks like a homeless person.
earlier. Well, you know who else was a homeless person? Was Atlas in Coho. What was his last name?
Yeah,
Corrigan.
But
Yeah, thank you.
Atlas looks like a
But he
homeless
was
person
hot.
But
that just left
Atlas was homeless when he was 17. That doesn't
This guy
count.
looks like he's been living on a train for 10 years.
Well,
He's a grown-up
he's a hobo.
boxcar children.
if he's living on a train, he can rail me anytime.
Whitney wants to ride that train.
Anyway, number 2, you are clingy, possessive, and protective.
Is that a check mark for you and your husband?
It is. You could possibly have anxious attachment style, and you could potentially, or this anxiety could manifest itself in a fear of being left by your partner.
I think we all have that fear.
Yeah.
I don't know if everybody does, but we all have anxiety.
Yeah.
We definitely do. You consistently demand assurance of their love.
Check.
You constantly, this one is not a check. I'm going to say that right now. You constantly attract abusive partners. That is not true for me. My husband is great.
No, he is really great.
You seem to crave a lot of sex.
Okay, we can't say that's a daddy issue problem. That is the
It's-
patriarchy saying that women shouldn't enjoy
This
sex.
isn't-
Fuck off.
This isn't saying that if you crave sex a lot that you have daddy issues.
It could
It's
just be one of the check marks.
part of daddy issues,
Okay,
right?
check.
You don't want to be alone / single. You want a partner.
Check.
How to know if you have daddy issues? That just made me laugh. They want you to ask these 3 questions to yourself, which I feel like are. I mean, okay. So question number 1: did you grow up fatherless?
Yes.
Question 2: have you lived with an abusive father? And question 3: do you have a father figure who is mentally unstable or emotionally unattached? Now, I feel that these are kind of unfair questions because later on in the article, it talks about anybody can have daddy issues, whether you grew up with or without these things. Because
and you even said earlier that it could be a positive or a negative impact.
right.
I think
right.
we also have to be really careful about victimizing the victim too.
Right.
Like you have issues because your parents sucked. Like that's not always the case. So I just want to say that out loud.
Yeah, I felt like there were a lot of assumptions with this, but I didn't appreciate those 3 questions personally because later, like I said, later on, it's like anybody can have daddy issues because basically it was like everybody's a person who is not going to do a perfect job as a parent. So everybody is going to have complicated relationships with parents that can lead to these issues. And it's not just, like I'll go on the record and say, like, I have some daddy issues, but my dad is great and was not abusive and is a functional, like, I don't want to say normal, but that's the only word that I can think of, right? Like, I did not grow up in a dysfunctional, abusive household. My dad is great, but we still have complexity in our relationship, right?
Do you ever sit back and go, I wonder how I'm fucking up my kids?
Oh,
I do.
every day.
Oh, yeah.
Every day.
Several
Because I'm
times
like,
a day.
okay, so, and I tell my husband this all the time. I'm like, we're doing our best. They're loved, they're
Yes.
fed, they're safe, right?
Yeah.
But I know that I'm fucking them up.
Oh, yeah,
somehow.
me too. 100%. And then the last thing that I wanted to talk about was just they gave 3 types of daddy issues, which again, I feel like are not an exhaustive list. Number 1, anxious, preoccupied. So this type of daddy issue would mean that you are anxious about being left. That is me. Number 2 is dismissive avoidant, which is somebody who has trust issues with their partner.
Me. Not with my partner, with everybody.
But just with everybody.
But part of
yeah.
it is me being like a Cancer sign, too. We don't trust anybody.
Oh.
We're very closed book, What?
I was just thinking when you said Cancer sign, I was thinking the word Cancer was the word like astrological. And I was waiting for you to tell me which sign you were. And then I realized that you already did. And
Cancers
then I felt
are
stupid.
very loyal homebodies that trust no one. We have a very select, close group of friends. If you guys can't tell.
It's us. And then the last type of daddy issue example they gave is fearful avoidant, which is a person who is fearful and worried specifically about intimacy with their partner. So I guess that could be, it didn't specify if that was physical intimacy or just emotional, but it could be both or either, I guess. But I just thought that was an interesting deep dive because we do joke about me having daddy issues. Because
You don't have daddy issues. You have zaddy issues.
zaddy, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, my TikTok FYP right now is like all Pedro Pascal. Like,
Well, it doesn't help that 4 or 5 times a day I forward you something.
I'm your daddy.
I think mine might be now too because I open up all your TikToks that have him in it.
Hey, stop trying to make Pedro Pascal happen. He's not going to happen.
He's already happening. It's happening all
in
around
your
you.
pants, not mine.
Well, and a lot of other people's too. You should look up. We'll have to link this in the show notes. He hosted SNL a few weeks ago, and
I saw this today.
this one
the
too.
teacher at the. Oh my gosh! When he was the teacher for our listeners, he's a teacher doing an assembly basically, and the kids are taking over the screen and uploading like their TikToks of him being a zaddy. Oh my gosh! It made me laugh so hard. Because it's
I'm glad that he can like laugh about it, right?
Yeah.
Yes. He did one of those, I don't remember if it's like Vanity Fair. One of the big magazine publications does a lie detector test when they interview people, and they did one with him, and they were like, "Do you think you're a heartthrob?" And he was like, "Yes."
Good for him.
I do think
That does make him a little more attractive, to be honest.
I was
It
going
was
to say,
really
I do
funny.
think part of his appeal is his personality because he's funny and he's charming and he's sweet. He's got this sort of childlike aspect to him. Yeah. I mean,
Childlike in a non-creepy way.
I know.
Whitney saw the look on my face. I was like, you nasty. Hey, can we take a quick break?
Yes.
Okay. We'll be right back.
Craft cocktails don't have to be fussy or ingredient heavy. Make and Muddle is here so that you can have a delicious 3-ingredient cocktail every time. Spend more time reading and less time mixing. Make and Muddle. Cocktail evangelists here to spread the good news about booze.
Now that we've talked about daddy issues, so should we actually talk about the chapter?
I know, right? It's been like 30 minutes and we've barely talked about it at all.
Sorry, friends.
So Poppy starts talking about how she's been watching Hawke, how he is always in emotional anguish, which we know as the reader who's read these books before that's over his brother being kidnapped basically and held captive by the Ascended.
Speaking of the Ascended, in one sentence, she tells us something that is a huge clue to what's going to happen in these books, in that the fact that she cannot feel anything from the Ascended ever.
Yeah.
And she says how she wishes it was a relief, but it actually creeps her out.
Yeah, I wrote that down too.
I wrote down a question/theory that the Ascended don't have emotions for her to read, which she wonders later if it's because they don't have a soul. And I wondered if after reading the Flesh and Fire books that are out so far, if it has anything
Can you tell the readers maybe that are new to the series what the Flesh and Fire series is?
Yes, it's Niktos and Seraphina. They're prequels to the Blood and Ash books, basically. Niktos is mentioned in the Blood and Ash books as like the king of all gods, and the Flesh and Fire. The Flesh and Fire books are his story with it's Seraphina's story.
Which is Shadow in the Ember and A Light in the Flame. So far. And then book 3 comes out in December of 2023.
I think so. But we learn in those books that Niktos had his cardia removed so that he could not feel like romantic love for another person because he didn't want that weakness. And I wonder if that has any kind of connection to the Ascended at all. And if that is related to the reason why they don't have emotions, because they do have emotions,
But only
right?
negative emotions, really.
Well, but she can't read any of it. Right? Like, we know that they
I
have
would
emotions.
say, I don't know if I would necessarily say they have emotions. I think they have reactions.
Yeah, I would agree.
There's a
with
big
that.
difference in that.
Okay, well, hold on. Jump ahead to the scene with Duke Tierman. Like, abusing her and torturing her and stuff, right?
I guess that is an emotion if
That's
he's
what
enjoying it, right?
That's what I'm saying. Like, if
Right.
he seems to be getting
Okay,
off
so
from it.
if we're going to go as nerdy as we normally do about Supernatural, let's talk about Sam when he doesn't have his soul on Supernatural. Sam can still feel emotions, but he lacks empathy and
that's true.
any type of like, like endearing affection for
Right.
someone. Like he knows, he even tells Dean, he's like, I know I love you and I know you're my brother, but I don't really give a fuck about you, is essentially what he says. So I wonder if it's the same type of thing where like
Maybe.
you've got those intense emotions, because I would say that lust is a very intense emotion, which is what Duke Tierman is feeling when he
Yeah.
beats her, right?
And Lord Mazine, too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
She looks around the room and sees that there are 2 glasses on the table. I think this is where she asks him about the glasses. Maybe she asks him a little bit later. But I had written down in my notes, we know from that bonus chapter, Hawke had been meeting with Commander Jansen and Kieran before Poppy comes in, but I had not remembered Jericho was also in that room.
I'd forgotten about that too.
I had completely
Is that the
forgotten
one that when so moving ahead a little bit in the book, is that when they attack Ryland?
Yes.
He's
Yes.
the one that she stabs, and then he attacks her later.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. So the meeting that they're having in that bonus chapter is basically Hawke is telling Commander Jansen, who's in charge of the guards in this Castle Tierman place, Macedonia. He is telling the commander, we're going to have to kill one of her guards to open up a spot so I can go in as her guard.
Right.
And Jericho is the one who does that. And he basically like gets his orders. But I had not really put together that based on that bonus chapter, they did not single out Rylan to kill.
It was any guard.
It was the next time she goes out into the garden. And I just thought that was so interesting.
But doesn't she only really have the 2 guards though, because no one has access to her? Isn't it
Right.
Rylan and Victor? So it could have been Victor that
It
died.
could have been Victor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wow.
Victor was either going to be killed by Cass and Jericho with this whole plot to kidnap Poppy, or he was going to get killed in the attack on the Great Right, which happened. So either way, like talking about him being a Victor, right, whose purpose is to help Poppy like reach her
But
purpose.
they didn't want him to die in the right, did they? They didn't want to kill him off, did
No,
they?
but
Okay.
but I mean, this is like really jumping ahead, but that's part of Poppy's struggle with Cass, is that the dissenters are the ones who attacked Victor.
Right. So it
Not him. It
right.
wasn't his order, but it was people who follow him.
Right.
If Victor had been the one on duty with her that night and Jericho had attacked and killed him, that would have been I mean, obviously this is why JLA wrote it the way she wrote it, right? If Victor had been killed by Jericho the way Rylan was, that would have been Cass's fault completely.
I
you
would
know?
say though that there's a part in the next couple chapters where they talk about that Ryland got too familiar.
Yes.
And he wasn't paying attention, which he really wasn't. And
Right, that's
I
true.
do wonder if it had been Victor,
If it would have gone differently.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
would have killed Jericho outright.
Maybe.
One thing when I read this, did I read correctly that he was also responsible for the previous guard, Hannes?
Yes.
What I don't understand, why didn't he slide in there? Well, how did Rylan get?
He wasn't there yet.
He went,
I don't think so.
but he
I
was
don't-
he was the one that,
I think that
like, why would he say kill her guard so that if the whole end game is for him to be her guard?
I think that he had only been in Solus for like a few months at that
So, like,
at
he
this point.
couldn't-
And the first guard died like the year before. I don't remember why they did that. I don't remember why.
yeah, it seems extraneous. Like, why'd
Yeah.
they kill that if he wasn't ready to do that?
I don't remember. I know.
Made me feel bad for him.
Multiple weeks and months from now, when we get to the end of this book in our recordings, I know that they talk about it before the end of this book. I can't remember off the top of my head why, because it does. Thinking about it right now, I'm agreeing with you that it's like that seems like it was
Unnecessary,
unnecessary.
yeah.
But I don't remember. So I thought this was hilarious when he's like, I don't know what we're doing, but I'm gonna go with it. And he just like takes his shirt off and
like throws it on the ground.
yeah, well, and she is just like, I wrote down that this reminded me of like a sitcom of like, you know, this sheltered, innocent girl who's like, maybe I'll get to kiss somebody today, and then she sees like this half naked hottie and she like can't breathe and like just.
Can I talk about?
I love that.
What a good job Jennifer Armentrout does of really explaining how it feels to be turned on.
Yeah.
Oh
right?
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Especially for Poppy not really understanding how
What
that
she's
feels.
feeling,
So
yeah.
the first thing she feels is like that coil in her stomach, which is a really good way to explain that. But
It is,
she
yeah.
talks about how the heat makes her skin flush and invades her blood, which is such a really captivating way to put that, and that all she wants to do is live, and that he's holding her in a way that a man has never held her before. And you know, as a woman, what that feels like, right? And so I love that, like, she explains all that, and the whole time she's going, he might kiss me, and then it's like, and Hawke kissed me.
Yeah. Did you notice too that he takes his shirt off and she's like, oh my God, he's so hot. And then she like immediately checks out his crotch. Did you guys notice
yes.
that?
Oh, she talks about how tight his pants
Yes.
are.
Yes. Yeah, she's
it
like,
hugs him
She
in all the
might
right
be a
places,
virgin, but she
basically.
still knows what
I know,
a dick
right?
is.
She's like abs, pecs, dick.
So in the margins of my book, she said, she talks about several times how she's trembling and how she never trembles, which again kind of shows her bravery and how she goes into life, into things. But she said, it was the shivers that erupted all over my skin and the inexplicable heaviness in my chest and that curling, tightening sensation below my navel, and even lower still where there was a sudden throbbing pulse between my legs. And I wrote, girl, same.
Well, I did not ever put this together until reading it this time, which again, I've read this book not as many times as the ACOTAR books, but I mean like 5 probably.
I mean, I've probably read this book 5 times.
This
to be
is
honest.
either, I think this is like my 5th or 6th time reading this book, but I had not really put together the full picture of this kiss with Hawke, because I realized reading it this time, I knew that it was her first kiss. Like, I knew that, but I hadn't really put together that for Poppy, this is basically her getting to have her first kiss with like the celebrity crush whose poster's up on her wall.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and it made me think back.
It's like if your
Back to
first kiss
olden
was
days.
Pedro
Okay.
Pascal.
I didn't know
Okay.
when I was 13.
I was wondering this as I was reading this, because he does say, is this the first time you've ever been kissed? And she goes, no. I have tons of experience. What are you talking
I've
about?
done this. What is it in the Virgins episode of New Girl when Schmidt is like, they call me the sex haver.
Well, and on Friends, he's like, I've done it. I do it all the time. I'm good at it. It's the same thing, right? So I'm really interested to know how old you all were when you had your first kiss.
I was 13.
Oh gosh, my first real kiss. I only remember my first one where I like attacked the kid in first grade and was like, I like had everybody stand around us and I was like gonna kiss Jonathan Hay. Like I was gonna kiss him.
Does he still live in Louisville? We need to bring him on the podcast.
Tell us
think
your
he
side of the
does.
story, Jonathan.
He's like, and I was scared, and now I'm in therapy.
But I would say middle school was my first kiss.
I
for
was
sure.
12. I can tell you his name. His name was Pete. And you know how he talks about, well, Britta shoved her tongue down my throat or sucked on my tongue. It was like the same kind of thing. And I mean, it was really sweet. He told everyone I was a good kisser. And I kind of did the Ross thing. And I was like, yeah, I've kissed someone before. I never had. But those middle school kisses are not good kisses. They really, it is not like kissing Hawke Flynn for the first time.
Well, of course
No,
not.
I did not feel a coil in my belly. That's for sure. I did can you please get your saliva off my face type of
Well,
thing.
I mean, I know I've told the whole story before, but just as a reminder to all of our listeners, my first kiss was at church
That's right. We talked about that before.
in a dark Sunday school room, and my mom caught us, and we lied and said that we were looking for a Bible.
I did not know that, you sinner.
Oh, that's hilarious.
We're like, oh, we're looking for a Bible.
I guess the fact that I can't remember mine means it was not
Not
memorable.
good.
Right. So, can I say when he asks if she's been kissed before, it's the first time he ever calls her a liar. And if you've not listened to this audiobook, you should, because the accent is like chef's kiss, and I love the way that she has him say liar. But she tells him, she notices once he starts teasing her, she's like, all of a sudden it says it was like she was doused with cold water and she's not horny anymore. And she says, you should get off. And he goes, I was planning to.
I wrote that down. That was one of my LOL lines that I wrote down.
I love
that made me laugh a
It sounds
lot.
like something I would say. Well, I'm trying.
Well, and he laughs at her. And she says, like, I don't think I've ever seen him laugh. And we find out in the bonus chapter, he surprises himself when he laughs. Yeah, because he hasn't laughed in a really long time.
This is the point where he has figured out who she is, right?
As soon as he kisses her, he realizes.
When he kisses her, he knows it's not Britta. And then when he moves her
And sees
hood
her
back,
red hair.
yeah,
Yes.
he knows. No, he didn't know that she had red hair. He recognized her mouth because that's all he ever got to see of the maiden.
Well, he was a little fixated on her mouth then,
Yes,
I
he
guess.
was.
It
Yeah.
must have been well formed.
I think he would say it was.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I wish someone could be like, well, I knew it was you because of your mouth. That's quite the compliment, actually, if you think about it.
Yeah, and I loved, like, she felt safe with him, and I think explicitly says that in her thoughts to herself, that she feels safe with him, even though she's doing something that she definitely shouldn't be doing. It's against all the rules. She'll get in a crap ton of trouble if, the Duke or Duchess find out, but she doesn't feel threatened in any way.
I actually made note of that from the very beginning. She's caught off guard. Like, she says instinct and Victor taught her to go for her dagger first, but instead she just stands there and she freezes up.
Yeah.
It's almost like she already knows she's safe with him. And she does mention it specifically later when she realizes that she's not trying to fight him off and she actually doesn't want to.
Yeah, like, why haven't you stopped him yet? Like,
Her
because
little
I
inner
wanna-
monologue when she's
Yeah.
like, the one part of me is like, I like that little inner monologue.
I want to keep going.
So this is also where we hear about the Dark One and Atlantia.
Yes.
And it's said so nonchalantly that you would miss it if you hadn't read these books. But he calls her princess, and he says it's because she's acting like a little princess. And I can't remember, in his point of view, is that why he calls her that?
He
Because
says-
she's being demanding.
Yeah,
He is-
like, you're being
Okay.
really bossy.
Right. And so then she says there's not even kings anymore. I mean, the only one there is the Dark One from Atlantia. And like, so
Yeah.
it puts this fear in you all of a sudden of everyone from Atlantia, which, spoiler alert, they're the good guys.
At least most of them are. I thought it was super relatable that Poppy is so self-conscious about her body. I hate that for her because it takes her out of the moment, and she's nervous about how, what her body looks like compared to Britta and her scars, and she does not want him to take her mask off because she doesn't want him to see that. And I hate that takes her out of the moment, but also, like, how often has that happened to me? And the answer is a lot.
Right. Like you do, when you're intimate with someone, you're thinking about the way that you look. And I mean, quite frankly, I don't know how many guys do. I mean, I don't know if that's a thing. And I know that men can be uncomfortable with their bodies, right? But women are definitely taught more to think about, like, the ideals of beauty and what you're supposed to look like.
Well, and I think that's what's kind of shoved in our faces. And that's what I kind of learned. And I wanted to do a little comparison of how Poppy saw herself versus how Hawke saw her. Because if you think about it, Poppy's ideals of beauty come from the Ascended. And my statement's going to be that the Ascended are currently, like, they are the social media of that time. They're the ones that are establishing these ideals and making her think this. And then she projects that onto herself when really
the Duke calls her a beautiful tragedy, right?
So here's all the things that Poppy describes about herself. She talks about how she always has to wear white, so she imagines she looks like a ghost, and she, like, marvels over how colors complement a lady's skin. So she thinks that she looks ghostly. She says attractiveness this is even from the first chapter that we read, and we talked a little bit about this last podcast. But attractiveness is seen as godlike. She doesn't think she will ever be godlike, which, spoiler alert, she is. But the Duke doesn't think she's beautiful, but he calls her a tragedy. And I will say this. If somebody calls you something like that, that sticks.
Yeah.
And I'm going to get a little personal. When I was in middle school, I was bullied. And I'm really honestly just now going through all this and what its repercussions are. But that entire year that I was bullied by this group of girls, they constantly said I was fat, because that's what they knew would hurt me the most.
Well, even in A Light in the Flame, which is the second prequel, the kind of like arch nemesis woman, the first thing she says to Seraphina is that she's fat.
Yeah.
And Seraphina in the book is like, really?
That's what you're going to come up with?
You're going to say to me is that I'm fat? Like,
which I wish that had been my response, but as a 12-year-old, you know,
that's no one's response,
Yeah.
right? And
Right.
Seraphina at this point was what, like 20 something, right? So she was older and like, but I mean, a lot of people still wouldn't have the wherewithal to look at them and say like, that's where you're going to go with this, because it wouldn't matter if you weighed 1 pound or 500 pounds. That is going to make you feel horrible.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it really did. It stuck with me, and I've struggled with my body image and how I feel about my body for a long time.
I
And
think you're smoking hot.
well, thank you. I will say that I've made huge progress on that. I don't think I'm, where I need to be yet, but it's because that was drilled into me. And so if somebody tells you that much, that you're not beautiful and you're a tragedy, that starts to become your reality. So if that's always in the back of her mind, obviously she's not going to feel great about herself.
Well, and he also tells her not just you're a tragedy, those scars are horrible, but also no one is going to find you attractive
Right.
because of it, right?
But on top of that, you could have been so beautiful.
Yeah.
It would,
but,
yeah.
'cause
Everyone would love you
But
if
how
only.
unfortunate. Yeah.
But we find out later that the Craven attack on her family was caused by these people that are now telling her that she's not beautiful.
And she recognizes the beauty in everybody else. So like when she meets Miss Willa, she says she recognized her for no other reason than that she was beautiful. And when she's talking about Tawny, she calls her enviable. She's tall and lithe with rich brown skin and beautiful
but even
brown
with
eyes.
Britta, she talks about how much skinnier she is
Right.
and how
Yes.
confident she
So
is.
she said, this is actually a quote from the book. The cloak hid the shape of my body, which was not nearly as thin as hers. No matter how active I was, I could not achieve the willowy frame of Duchess Tierman or some of the other ladies. And she also says she's a little envious of Britta at that point.
Right, but I love that throughout all these books it talks about how much she loves cheese and bacon.
I
Yes.
know.
It's
Yeah.
like the most
she's
relatable
so real.
thing.
Yeah.
I mean, and here's the thing: like, she kicks ass.
Yeah.
it has nothing to do with the shape of her body.
But I don't
She is
even
strong
know-
and brave and amazing.
that, like, I mean, she's described as having curves, but honestly, I don't know, like, everybody's, ruler on that is different. Everybody's spectrum is different. Like she talks about Hawke when he picks her up, that his strength was staggering since I wasn't exactly light.
Can I go ahead and say, too, if you're listening to this episode and you have views on what Poppy's body looks like, we don't really give a fuck. Don't message us about it, because everyone's views are different and we don't really want to hear about it. It's however you think of her being and however JLA thinks of her being, and she's beautiful.
It's a
no matter what.
controversial subject for the
It
fandom.
is,
Like
and
everybody feels so strongly
Let it
about
go.
it.
It's mean girl behavior. We're
Yeah.
not going to do
And
that.
that's my point, is that to somebody who is maybe, really, really skinny, somebody saying that they're not willowy might just have a little extra, roll or whatever. But for somebody else, maybe that looks completely different, because everybody's spectrum is different. And everything, in my opinion, is okay. If
Well,
it's-
and fat can also be based off cultural standards.
Yeah.
Right. So, like, in certain parts of history, having, a thicker waistline was a very attractive thing, because you can bear children, and like that was seen as very, very beautiful.
Yeah.
And then we get to the 1990s where, all of the models are
Waif.
stick
Waifs,
thin. And
yes.
they were actually way, way, way more unhealthy than someone with a little bit of weight on them, right?
Yeah.
And so the ideals of beauty are just social constructs.
Yes.
exactly.
Except for me.
You're beautiful no matter what
Yes,
era
you
you're in.
It's an objective truth.
And to your point, Whitney, though, like, I hate that she expected Hawke would be repulsed by her scars, because she actually mentions that it's tragic that she was never embarrassed of her scars. Like, to me, it's tragic that she was never embarrassed of her scars and considers them a badge of honor for what she went through. But then all of a sudden she's second guessing those.
Isn't it so relatable, though, that she's making out with a hot guy and then she's all of a sudden nervous about her own body?
Right.
Like, everybody has done that. Right? Like, he's more beautiful than I am, and like, he's not going to like this. And like, here's what I'm going to tell everyone listening to this podcast. A naked and willing woman is more attractive than anything in the entire world.
To a man, yeah.
Men do not care about that shit. Let it go.
I was just thinking too, when you're talking about how she thinks Hawke is going to respond to her scars and stuff, like he felt her body and he felt, you know, her
and he
size.
said he was intrigued
when he pushed her down, and he still like was like, let's make out.
Oh,
and,
I'm getting there.
but she is not thinking in that way, right?
Exactly.
Like she's not recognizing that he wanted to make out with her,
And
you know?
but the reason is she keeps constantly wondering why he's still there. Why, like, she
That's
doesn't
true.
understand why he would be interested in her. So she thinks there's got to be some other motive. But then, contrast that with Hawke, and this is stuff that I got both from these chapters that we read and some things from the extra POV, which we probably need to post a link to that.
I already put it in the notes. Yeah, I'm actually, though, if you're on Instagram too, I did post on there to read this extra chapter so that you're prepared.
So Hawke, on the other hand, as opposed to what Poppy thinks of herself, while he still thinks she's Britta, he recalls that Britta was thin and that Poppy had an enticing mixture of hardness and softness. That's a quote. And that there were curves here, lush ones I couldn't wait to unwrap and explore. So he's like worshiping her curves, right?
I love how every episode there's always one time where Whitney's like,
So, and I don't know, maybe this is a man thing, and it's funny that it comes back up. I guess he did think her mouth was well formed because he literally gets a hard on just from looking at her mouth.
Yeah, he does.
you've never gotten turned on by looking at someone's mouth? I like a well-formed mouth.
Well, and in his POV chapter where he's like, oh my gosh, it's been way too long since I got laid.
Yeah.
Like, I've got to chill out. It's pretty great.
He constantly says he's intrigued by her, not just her body, but her mind and all her little personality quirks. Like, he says it's so cute when she, what is she giggles or something.
When Kieran knocks, right?
No,
She giggles.
yes, but it's also when he says, well, I'm going to introduce myself anyways. I'm Hawke Flynn, but you probably already know. And she goes, hi. He's
Yeah.
like, and wasn't that just the cutest? He slides a hand over her, quote, lush curve of her hip and her smooth skin. And then at some point, he says to her, would you rather I wax poetic about how I'm charmed by your beauty, even though I can only see half your face, which, by the way, from what I can see is pleasing? Would you rather I tell you I'm captivated by your eyes? They are a pretty shade of green from what I can tell. And she accuses him of lying at that point. But even in his point of view, he says, I'm not lying. He tells her he's not lying, but he definitely isn't lying. And then finally, he soaked in the sight. This is right before he's getting ready to leave. He soaked in the sight of her, that surprising mass of red waves and those parted lips, the way she sat there, clutching the edges of her cloak around her, brave yet vulnerable. It was an interesting mix, one I wanted to continue exploring. So he's already basically worshiping her body, mind, soul.
He is so smitten. Yes.
Yeah. And so the conclusion you come to with this is that Poppy still doesn't see herself as beautiful because the Ascended have such warped standards of beauty due to the fact that they're all beautiful because that's sort of the gift they get from being a vampire, I guess. And that's exactly what social media does. So they paint this picture of beauty on the outside, but they're actually truly monsters. Like, if you think about it, because aren't the Craven like what you become if you don't
feed once you're
right?
turned?
Yes.
So if you think about that, that's what they are on the inside, is those monsters. And
that don't become these disgusting, ugly things as long as they drink blood.
exactly.
Right. So that's the only thing.
So
keeping
it's
them beautiful.
definitely a facade.
Here's what's interesting. The only thing keeping them beautiful is someone else's life force
Yes.
that they probably think is ugly.
Yes.
Way to go, JLA.
So just like social media perpetuates the false claim that we need to be beautiful to be worthy. And I mean, I'll be honest, I'm guilty of not posting pictures because I think I look bad in them. You know, I mean, I think everybody probably does
You know,
that.
I think
sure,
that's
yeah,
okay, though. It's
everybody
okay
does.
to edit, right?
Yeah.
But I will say, social media, you only post your best stuff.
Exactly. That's what you put out there. It's a false picture of what real life is. And if that becomes your reality, it's totally skewed. So, you know, while they revere Poppy as the maiden, they do not revere her as one of them. And that's where she gets that terrible self-esteem.
To them, the maiden is not a person.
Exactly.
And we know later, to them, the maiden's a blood bag.
Exactly.
Right? She's going to be the one to make new vampires. She's going to be the one to feed these people because they know that she can heal and continue to produce Atlantean blood, and she doesn't realize that yet.
Yeah.
So even though they think she's a beautiful disaster or whatever, she's their life force. Right, which is really ironic.
What I do love about this and like concluding all this is that even though Poppy has a pretty low opinion of her outward beauty, I still think she loves herself in many other ways. And unfortunately, in current times, there have been tons of studies done that prove that this whole facade of social media, it can pave the way to depression, anxiety, eating disorders, body dysmorphia, and the whole like gamut of really terrible problems that this is causing, and especially our young people right now. And for Poppy to sort of like, even though she feels that way, she sort of overcomes it by being like, well, I'm a badass anyway.
Well,
and she is.
I will say, prior to social media, it was magazines, right?
Yeah.
Like, there's always
It's media in general,
right? There's always something that's perpetuating the idea of what beauty should be at that time.
Yeah. No, that's true. I really enjoyed learning how like down to make out and do stuff that Hawke was in his POV bonus chapter. He is realizing, kind of like what you were just saying about the Ascended Deb, they view the maiden as like this object. He 100% was viewing the maiden as this object as well before he met her. Like he assumed that she was going to be like the Ascended, that she was like in on it and a willing participant.
She was like a socialite, right? Like
basically,
dense
yes,
and can't defend
pampered,
herself. Yeah,
spoiled.
He talks in that chapter too about how they put her on a pedestal and she's like this
for no reason. Yeah. And he, is talking to her in the Red Pearl and realizing like I was making some really wrong assumptions. I didn't realize that she was going to be like nice, and she actually like agreed with me about some stuff when I asked a couple of questions. And and
we learn later in the books, it took this one instance for him to start questioning everything that he's doing.
Yep.
Which, spoiler alert, is to kidnap the maiden and use her essentially for ransom to get his brother back, who has been kidnapped by the Ascended.
And this
to be
has
used
been
as a blood
years
bag.
in the
50,
making.
50 years at this point. Or
I
did they
think
hold Cass for 50
he was
years?
held for 50 years. And
How
his
long have
brother,
they had
I think it's
Malik?
I think it's 100.
Yeah. So 150 years of them holding an Atlantean, because they have to have an Atlantean to make new vampires.
And he's been plotting this for years and years and years. Like
Right.
this is the long game. Like he's getting to the end of the long game, and now he's questioning because he's like, this is not exactly
well, she's
what
a
I
person, he realizes.
Yes.
Exactly. Yes. And he is very much like, I will 100% make out with you. I will do whatever you want. And he realizes like how innocent and sheltered she is. And he's like, okay, she came here to like have sex with somebody, and I'm not going to do that because I know I'm a bad guy,
Is
but
that
I'm not
what he says in the point of view? So if he had come back, they wouldn't have had sex?
I mean, he would have
said
wanted
he would
to.
pretty much done everything except for that
Yeah,
one thing.
Knowing what we know about him later, he couldn't have held back. I don't think he could have.
But in this scene, he's still planning on just like killing her guard and kidnapping her and piecing out.
Right,
And
but
so
later he has sex with her knowing what it's going to do to her. So he would have still
Well,
had sex with her because he
that's
doesn't like
true.
love her at this point. Like
I don't know,
he is
maybe.
so into her. He
oh
would
yeah,
have.
he's super duper into her. Yes. So then Kieran knocks on the door.
Wait, first of all, can I tell you my favorite
Cock
line?
blocker.
Like I think from the entire book series, my
Sure.
favorite Hawke/Castile line is when he says, "Tell me what you enjoy so I can make you love it."
I think
Ooh.
that was mine too. I was like, well, hello.
I wrote reason number 872 that Hawke is the hottest.
He is. Everybody thinks so.
That I mean, that definitely would turn me on if somebody
but
said
she
it to me.
but she goes, what?
yeah, she's like, I don't know. Just like stuff.
That's like on Clues, and she goes, I don't know, stuff.
So Kieran knocks on the door, which, knowing that Kieran is a Wolven that has like super hearing and super smell, he 1000% knows that Hawke has a girl in there, right? Like he may not realize it's the maiden, but he knows there's somebody else in there, and he's just like, hey, we got to go, dude. Like, you can't be doing this.
Well, wasn't it who, in Hawke's point of view, who is there that he has to go see right that second?
He says it's the envoy with the supplies.
The bonus chapter didn't say specifically. It was just Kieran saying the envoy's here, and Cass is like, "Oh crap!"
And he's like, "Oh, there's the supplies we need." Or
I
whatever.
think it must have been really important for him to leave that moment.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's really, really, again, erotic that he begs her to stay. Like,
know.
please stay here and wait
Well,
for me.
and at the end of his POV chapter, he basically says, "I'm almost positive she will be gone when I come back, but I'm gonna wish that she was here, and I'm gonna keep like looking for her."
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to masturbate later.
This is not over, basically. So then we shift from the Red Pearl back to Castle Tierman in Poppy's room, and we meet Tawny for the first time, which I wish we got a little bit more of her in this reading, but it's a pretty quick chapter. And basically Tawny is like, I know that you weren't here last night. You snuck out again. You know, where did you go? And I love we get a little bit of their friendship and all the hijinks that they've gone on together. Like,
they're like little Thelma and Louise.
Yes. She's like, why didn't you ask me to come with you this time? Like, we had fun when we skinny dipped in the lake or whatever. I'm like, what?
Which we're supposed to assume that's Seraphina's lake, right?
No, because Macedonia, the Tierman Castle is like on the other side of Solus.
But we don't necessarily know how the maps line up, do we?
Yes.
We do?
I think we do.
Okay.
I think you need to watch the 4-hour PowerPoint that Whitney put together.
It seems that I think that JLA confirmed this. I think, but I might be making that up. The maps seem to be that where Seraphina lived is like the capital of Solus. I'm not sure that her lake still exists in Solus, but Macedonia is like the northern part, and Seraphina stuff was on the southern part.
Maybe next episode we can compare the maps, because I want to talk about how there is that island that's off to the... I do never eat shredded wheat. Do you guys ever do
Yes,
that with
I
the
do.
map? That's off to the west.
I have no idea what that means.
So you
really?
can remember which way a compass goes. So north, east, southwest, right? So it's never eat shredded wheat or never eat soggy
clockwise.
worms. You never did that in grade
I've
school?
never heard that. Either that or I blocked it from
Okay,
memory.
so we know there have been some things on this podcast that no one else knows about. This is a thing because Mindy knows about it.
Oh, yeah,
too.
for sure.
But there, I forget what the island's called, but I felt like it was closer to Macedonia than Carcedonia. So I want to look at that.
Well, we can look at that. You might be thinking of Ireland. I don't know.
I
Well,
don't fucking know.
Now you're just making shit up.
yeah. So anyway,
It's
Poppy
like
and Tawny.
being FF.
Yeah, Poppy and Tawny went skinny dipping, and Tawny is basically like, "Why didn't you invite me?" Like, so Poppy tells Tawny that she went to the Red Pearl, and Tawny's all upset that she missed out on it, basically. But we get the description of Poppy's room, which is basically like nothing.
It makes me so sad.
Yeah,
She
it's
talks
so bare
about the
bones.
comforts that everyone else has, and that she has lost access to those things for essentially misbehaving
As a
throughout
punishment.
the
Right.
years.
Yes.
Right.
Well, and we learn pretty soon in the next several chapters that misbehaving is like just made up.
Yeah.
Well,
right.
misbehaving in the first time is her accidentally being in the presence of someone else.
Exactly.
God forbid.
Like, she definitely does break the rules, but the stuff that she gets in trouble for is like nothing. Like
Yeah.
it's not really breaking any rules at all. She's just super mistreated. They start talking a little bit about the Mist and the Craven, which I don't think they've actually named as Craven yet at
They've
this point.
not, no.
But I thought that it was
I think
really
that's the last line of the chapter. I think
Oh,
they
like a
say-
Craven attack. Yeah, that might be true. I thought it was really cool foreshadowing. Tawny was saying, once we're ascended and we're in the capital, we don't have to worry about these attacks anymore because the Mist hasn't come close to the capital rise in like decades. And
How
I'm like,
convenient.
Yeah.
right. And I'm like, well, we see it go into the capital when Poppy creates it and brings
Yeah.
it to the capital in War of Two Queens.
Well,
So-
and if you've not read much of these books, we know that the Mist. So whenever people like dissenters are more active or something happens in Macedonia that the Duke and Duchess don't like, they let the Craven go wild as like punishment. So they can be like, the gods aren't happy with us and they sent the Craven. So of course they're never going to go to the capital because that's where the queen is,
Keep
right?
everybody in
Fear-mongering,
line.
And I do want to say the last sentence of the chapter is it's accursed. Right. So they've
that's
not
right.
named the Craven.
But you're
yet.
right, yeah.
So you
Still
don't
not.
know what the cursed are
That's right.
quite yet.
I also thought it was kind of, in a sad way, kind of cool about how Tawny is so excited to become an ascended and to move to the capital, and Poppy is like, she's way more excited about it than I am because she knows what her future is as somebody that's going to be ascended. I just have this really vague given to the gods. Like, what does that mean?
Well,
No one will
can
tell
I
me.
say for any 19-year-old, if you spend years taking away their comforts, not telling them where they're going to be going, and I mean, really any human nature, right?
Right.
And we know that Poppy wasn't going anywhere. She was a blood bag.
Right.
That's what she was going to be. She was going to be fed on over and over and over again. So they're not telling her anything. They're keeping her secluded. Of course, she's going to start doing shit she shouldn't be doing.
Right.
I mean, what the fuck were they thinking? Have they ever been around teenagers? Ever?
Probably not. Everybody's like 500 years old.
I mean, well, and I guess they're eating all the young people,
I know,
aren't they?
right?
Which is really sad for the record.
They're only around, centuries old people. But Poppy is thinking like, well, of course Tawny is excited because she is going to, be free and she's not going to have to be my friend and companion anymore and all this. And it's so ironic that they think that becoming an ascended is going to give them a bunch of freedom when you become a slave to this lifestyle of being a vampire.
You can't go outside during the
Right.
day.
Yeah. Like-
you have to feed or you're going to turn into
and
a
nobody
craven.
knows this except the people who are already ascended, right?
But they also lose the function to care because they become okay with feeding on children.
Well,
Right.
but not everybody, because we see signs that Ian in book 3, her brother, is an ascended, but also is like helping her.
Right. So you do have to wonder if it like takes time for them to lose their humanity, or because they do say that at the beginning, and this is very common in vampire lore, that you have like bloodlust, right?
Yeah,
And you
yeah.
just feed all the fucking time. And it seems like Ian has not done that. So it begs the question, we talked last week about Poppy being an unreliable narrator. It begs the question of which one's right.
Right.
Does it take a long time for them to lose their humanity and that's why they're sequestered away, or are they just feeding on everyone?
Right.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Ian may still be in that area, that gray area of having
Yeah.
human feelings still.
Well, I mean,
Poor
I think
Ian,
he
man.
definitely seems to have human feelings.
I know. But how long has he been changed? Less than a
Two-
year,
2
right?
years.
2 years? Okay,
2
yeah.
years.
So, I mean, I don't know. I'm really sad about Ian.
I hope we get more info about him.
What's
Yeah.
odd about this whole thing with Tawny too is that Tawny believes that even though Poppy's completely different, like she's the maiden and she's revered, and that like she knows her situation is completely different, she thinks the same thing's going to happen to Poppy that happens to her, and that they're going to be together and they're going to live happily ever after they're both ascended.
Well, I think she's like, well, why would they spend all this time making her into this person if they're going to mistreat her? And
Right.
Connie's, a little naive.
I was just going to say, it definitely shows her naivete.
All of these, and Poppy even talks about this in later books, because the Atlanteans ask Poppy, like, how could you continue to let this happen? And if you think about your worldview, never in your mind would you go, okay, this person who is supposed to be this compassionate leader is actually feeding on everyone
Right.
and creating creatures that feed on people that then create more creatures to keep us all in line. Like, why would you ever think that that would be a thing? And so to Tawny's point of view, right, they're treated so lovely, and Poppy has technically all of her human needs fulfilled with the exception of like affection, right? So why would they do anything bad?
But why wouldn't she think that something was going to be different once they ascended, like that the maiden would be still put on a higher pedestal or on a higher, I don't know, something than her?
Because all the rules are for before you get given to the gods. So it's been set up like you have to do this until this day and then you're done.
Okay.
So
I see that.
I could see why she thinks like a flip will be
What
a
makes
switch
me
will
sad
be flipped,
is that then Poppy starts thinking and thinking like, I've been cruel to like not allow her. Like I've been cruel to be in opposition to what she thinks is so happy, and I've
she
been
says, "I feel bad for being negative about this since Tawny's
like she puts
so
the blame
excited."
on her.
Little does she know is Tawny would have been fed on and died.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or would have become an ascended.
Right.
She would have become an ascended like
Yeah.
Ian and forced to feed on other people
Yeah.
or die.
Right, because I
Yeah.
guess that is something to keep Poppy in line. They probably would have ascended Tawny to keep her around, so Poppy
Yeah.
could have a friend, and honestly, almost like a spy, right, within her bedroom
True.
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so then chapter 3 ends with Victor coming in and getting Poppy because there is a cursed.
Dun dun dun.
Yeah. To be continued. Did you guys have anything else you wanted to talk about before we switch into our nerdiest things of the week?
No.
Yeah. I think we covered it all.
All right.
And
Well,
then some.
yeah. Who wants to share their nerdiest thing first?
I shared this on Instagram this week, so I don't mind going first. So I went down to Florida for the Disney Princess runs, and I was going to do all 3 runs, but I hurt my ankle halfway through the second run. But I listened to Lynette Noni writes this really great series of books, and I'm on book 3. It's called The Blood Trader, and I'm literally like, everyone's like listening to all this like, really great upbeat music, and I'm listening to a story about people being in prison.
Blood Trader.
So The Blood Trader, it's the first book is called The Prison Healer, then The Gilded Cage, and then The Blood Trader. They're YA fantasy, and they are so fucking good. They are wonderful books, so much so that I was like, I'm not listening to music, I'm going to listen to a book. So that was my nerdiest thing of the week.
Whatever gets you motivated.
Yeah,
I mean, whatever
seriously.
works, right?
I wouldn't say I was motivated, but I did listen to it.
It got
I'm
you
going to
through.
keep walking because I want to hear the next chapter.
Exactly.
Right. Mindy, what about you?
So for me, I keep getting, as part of being on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited and all that stuff. Actually,
I'm not even sorry I told you about that.
no, I'm so glad I totally took that plunge.
Can I go ahead and like put a key into like a little tidbit about Kindle Unlimited? Because my husband thought it was like a bunch of authors that can't get published and a bunch of shitty books. And really, it is a jumping off point to get you typically to read the first book in a series
Yes.
by an author.
Yes.
It's how I read King of Battle and Blood, which we did a bonus episode
Yeah.
on, and how I've gotten into some of my favorite authors. So I think the first month's $5 and then it turns into
Just like
$10. If you read one book a month on there,
It's
you
worth
pay for
it.
it. It's
Right.
so
awesome.
worth it.
Yeah.
But, and I don't know if it's because of that or because I've bought previous books on Kindle. I don't know what it is, but I'm in this like beta thing for these points. Like you get points when you buy a Kindle book. And I keep getting like on my phone, I'll get a notification that says double points day on Kindle. And so I'm like, okay, what do I
Don't
need?
mind if I do.
Right. Like, what do I need to go buy?
What do you get with your points?
So you get points, and as you get enough points, you get $3 off a book. So like you get, I want to say it's like 400 or 500 points, and then you get some money off a book. And so they keep sending me these. I'm like, well, if it's double points, then I must buy a book. And so I just keep buying the first book in series of new hockey porn. Like I just keep buying new hockey porn.
Or you could buy the first book in the series of all the fucking things I've been telling you to read.
See, I have all those from Kindle Unlimited though.
The Prison Healer is not on Kindle Unlimited.
Okay, well,
so get that next.
I'll have to get that with my next double
I know
points.
that you love YA and you'll really like
Okay,
these books.
I'll have to look into that for sure. But I just keep buying. So I've started. Well, I haven't started because I haven't read them yet. But I started buying new hockey series. One is the Wildcat series by Rebecca Jenshek, and then the other one, it's called Boyfriend, and it's the Moo You series by Serena Bowen.
Moo, you.
Yeah, I don't know. It's like
MU like a fraternity?
no, it's moo like a cow.
like a cow's
moos.
opinion.
It's like a moo point.
Oh man.
So I don't know if that's like it's a college hockey team. So I guess it's whatever. I don't know. I haven't read it
Cows
yet.
are out on the ice.
So I haven't read it yet. But anyway, that's what I keep doing is I keep buying. And then I made it to $3 off, and so I bought People We Meet on Vacation because it was like $4 on a deal. Like I just keep Kindle knows how to hook people because
Well, and you're not even on is it BookBub, I believe. I get their daily emails, and it's like books that are like ebooks that are super duper cheap.
Yeah.
So I buy a book like 3 or 4 days a week.
I feel like I do that now too.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, marketing.
And then I'm looking at my TBR and my Kindle, and I'm like, shit. Like, I've got so much to read.
You know what, though? I think that's exciting, because how horrible is
Me
it to
too.
not know what you're going to read next and then to have a bunch of stuff to
That's
pick
true.
from?
That is
Yeah.
true. But you know me, I'm so indecisive. I'm like,
Right.
I don't know what to read.
So-
I'm so excited for the summer, because the summer's when I read constantly.
Right. Yeah.
Summer's when I can't read at all.
I know, it's like so opposite for us.
Well, I haven't had a super nerdy week. I did read the Plated Prisoners series and very much enjoyed it, and then immediately started rereading it.
It's
I'm
one
almost
of those
finished with it
series that
again.
you should reread, I think.
Yeah, it's really good. But my definitely the actual nerdiest thing is that I figured out how to get pictures as the face of my Apple Watch, and so I uploaded some fan art of Castile and Poppy.
Oh.
It's
We're
really
looking at it
cute.
now.
It's
very
Dominique Wesson, yeah.
It is, yeah. So that's pretty cool. My husband has not noticed that yet. And I can't wait for him to be like, what is that? And why did you do that? But anyway, I like it. I think I'm going to try to do fan art for whatever book we're like talking about on the podcast and like
Ooh, that'd
switch
be
it up.
fun.
Yeah, I thought so too.
I just really want to find a shirtless picture of Castile, and I'm going to put it on my watch face.
Oh, I bet we can find one.
I bet we can do.
All
Maybe I'll
right.
put it on my new tablet.
Yeah, yours like screensaver.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that is it for this week. Next week, we will be talking about chapters 4 and 5.
Have a good week, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.